V-Dub gang, what's up? Back at it with the GTI motor. Today we're gonna finish up this block. Bottom end will be first, then we get the head on, finish off with the timing. Before I forget, I'm gonna clean off the old silicone and prep it for a new bead of sealant. Oil pump assembly is next. The pickup tube is all cleaned up, free from gunk and debris. 3 bolts, all torqued to 11 foot-pounds. Put on your chain tensioner, bolt torque to 11 foot-pounds. Now to install the oil pump chain, the sprocket from the pump needs to be off. Thread the chain around the crankshaft sprocket and around the oil pump sprocket. Make sure the logos on the sprocket are on the outside. Pull the tensioner back and slide the oil pump sprocket onto the shaft. If it doesn't want to go on, check the shaft of the oil pump. There is a flat spot that needs to align with the sprocket. Simply turn the shaft with your finger and try again. Once you get it on, bolt can go in and torque it to 18 foot-pounds. With everything torqued and lubed, crank seal and flange can go on. I'll be using JB Weld Ultimate Grey RTV silicone gasket maker and sealant. We're gonna stick with the directions on the back. Just gonna apply some silicone sealant to the flange, slide it carefully over the crankshaft and hand tighten the bolts until the sealant starts to seep out. From there we let it dry for an hour and then tighten 1/2 turn. And then when the silicone completely dries in 24 hours, then we can tighten all the bolts to 11 foot-pounds. Now that the flange is on, new crank gear and new crank bolt can go on. Simply line up the notch on the gear with the crank and put the bolt in. Give it a few turns to make sure it rotates evenly and doesn't rub against the flange. Now we can torque the bolt to the spec of 66 foot-pounds with an added 1/4 turn. Torquing it will be a pain in the ass to do since it does spin freely. So if you have the counter hold tool to prevent the crank from spinning, great. But if you don't, you can wedge a piece of 2x4 between the counterweight of the crankshaft and the block. The wood will act as your counter hold tool. Now to finish off the bottom end, we slap on the oil pan. Same deal with the sealant. Apply a bead and try your best to tighten the bolts evenly, going from one side to the opposite side like a star pattern, just so that the sealant flattens out properly. Bottom end pretty much finished. Now we can start on the head. Make sure when you throw the head on, the camshaft is at top dead center and your pistons are a bit down in the cylinder. Just so you're sure they don't interfere with each other when you put the head on. Here we got a head gasket set from L-Ring. Here's the part number if you need it. And of course, some brand new head bolts to be used with the Volkswagen head bolt tool. Clean off both surfaces of the head and your block. Throw your gasket on and then the head. Here we have a sheet from L-Ring with some info. Now this torque spec is slightly different than what the Bentley calls for. It's totally up to you which way you want to do it, Bentley or L-Ring. Either way, the bolts will be fine. And of course the tightening sequence, very important to follow. So as specified in the manual, we're going to tighten the head bolts in 3 stages. Stage 1, we will tighten every bolt within the tightening sequence to 30 foot-pounds. Moving on to stage 2, we're going to do a quarter turn for every bolt within the tightening sequence. Then finally, stage 3, we're going to add another quarter turn within the tightening sequence. Last but not least, we got timing. We got the full timing kit from Euro Tuning, tension roller, water pump, hydraulic tensioner, and apparently the most hated belt on the planet, the Gates Blue Racing Belt. All brand spanking new, of course. There are two 10mm bolts for the tensioner and three 10mm bolts for the water pump. All these bolts will be torqued to 11 foot-pounds. The hex bolt for the tension roller will be torqued to 20 foot-pounds. Once you get all those on, all that's left is to get the belt on, and of course the part that I hate the most, making sure that it's timed correctly. So the first thing you want to do is position the belt around the crankshaft and put on the lower timing cover and also the crank pulley. On the cover and pulley there will be notches that indicate top dead center for cylinder number 1. Once you get that centered, go ahead and wrap the belt around the water pump and over the camshaft gear, which should be at top dead center already. Now most of the time the belt can be difficult to get over the cam gear. What I like to do is loosen the tension roller so it brings the belt out a bit. Then from there you can carefully bring the belt over the cam. Once we get that belt on, you can go ahead and pull the pin on the tensioner after you've double checked your timing marks on the cam and the crank. So that's it for today. I got the motor out of the house. In the next few days, my brother is gonna start throwing some stuff on. Pretty much get it prepped so that it'll drop into the car next week.
Tomorrow.
Check this out. Here's just a small little sneak peek at how the motor will look with the full turbo kit on. There's still a lot of work to be done. The clutch kit and trans are gonna go on. And after that's done, it'll be placed in the car. So the next time we come back, expect to see this in there. Stay tuned for the next update, guys. Mahalo for watching. See y'all on the next one.